question. Suppose, Lord Russell, this film were to be looked at by our descendants, like a Dead Sea Scroll in 1,000 years' time. What would you think it's worth telling that generation about the life you've lived and the lessons you've learned from it?
I should like to say two things. One intellectual and one moral. The intellectual thing I should want to say to them is this. When you are studying any matter or considering any philosophy, ask yourself only what are the facts and what is the truth that the facts bear out. Never let yourself be diverted either by what you would wish to believe or by what you think would have beneficent social effects if it were believed. But look only and solely at what are the facts. That is the intellectual thing that I should wish to say. The moral thing I should wish to say to them is very simple. I should say, love is wise, hatred is foolish. In this world, which is getting more and more closely interconnected, we have to learn to tolerate each other. We have to learn to put up with the fact that some people say things that we don't like. We can only live together in that way. And if we are to live together and not die together, we must learn a kind of charity and a kind of tolerance, which is absolutely vital to the continuation of human life on this planet.
Hello, good morning, good evening, good day, good afternoon, and aloha. Welcome back to another live episode of the Unidentified Celebrity Review, your home for credible news, reviews, and commentary on everything UAP and UFO. My name's Luis Jimenez. I'm the creator and host. And what an exciting day. I think this disclosure clock is going to be moving big time today. We're going to talk about it here in a second. Before we do, of course, I want to say thank you and hello to everyone in the chat. Matthew Riot, Lord Ludacris, Now I Become Death, Mr. Music, Heiko Sejuru, Baby Goat, Haya Den Amug. Hello. Let's see here. Mostly Space. What's up, guys? Ventide, Grant Lavac, a beautiful man. He's doing amazing work. Go check out his YouTube channel, you guys. He's really breaking down the Australian side, especially the political side of the UAP discussion. So go check out his discussion. He's doing his channel. He's doing really great stuff. J. Allen Heineken, what is going on? One of my favorite, if not favorite, names on YouTube. Eventide. Thank you all so much for being here. Sparky Lady, I see you. Where are you? There you go. Martian Mutt. I think it's the first time I've seen you. Welcome. Gus Baja. I think it's the first time I've seen you as well. Welcome. All right, here we go. I also want to say thank you to DOS Tapes. They provide tunes on the show. There's also another dude that does our tunes is White Bat Audio. Their links are in the description below. This show will be available on iTunes, Spotify. So if you're on the road, check us out there. Leave us a rating review. It goes a very long way. Want to say thank you to the Patreon members. Thank you so much, you guys, for supporting the show. Without your support, honestly, it would be very, very difficult to do this show. I want to say thank you to the YouTube members out there. Anybody who's highlighted with green, like a Matthew Riot, Sparky Lady, you guys, thank you so much for being YouTube members. Super chatters, moderators, thank you guys so much for helping this show flow and stay respectful. And want to let you guys know that if you can't support with the almighty dollar, don't sweat it. We're a public access channel. We're here for you, baby. Everything is free. There's no paywall. We're super proud of that. But if you can support, please do. It goes a very, very long way. And then we've got links. We've got links for our co-hosts. We've got links to the things that we'll be discussing. And we've got links to KGRADB and merch and all sorts of stuff. So check out the links below. And yeah, that's it. Let's get started with today's show. Without further ado, let's bring in our co-host, Mr. Ratherby Squidding, Jane Kyle. What's going on?
Hey.
You just do some last minute reading of the Senate bill.
You doing? You guys are scanning the Senate bill, right? Because it seems it's hot off the presses. I saw D. Dean Johnson had posted about it this morning. This was we had talked about this. Was it last week? We had sort of mentioned this bill but it wasn't. We hadn't seen the full bill yet, or what they're proposing for the bill. I guess we should probably preface this conversation. I'm super excited about this bill. I think there's some really cool stuff that was written in this, and we're gonna read the whole thing because I think it's worth breaking down the entire thing as best we can. But I think to preface it, it would be manage your expectations, because this bill and amendment have a long way to go before they become law. And I think we're going to get different versions of what we see here. I don't think it's going to go through as written. If it does, wow, I think this is going to be 2023. And please, especially you can confirm this. I've been saying on this show for a long time, 2023 is going to be a big year for this discussion. And the reason I kept saying that, the reason I kept harping that, is because this legislation here and what passed in the House yesterday with, by the way, zero debate. Like, they get 10 minutes to debate this topic. Nobody on either side of the aisle had an issue with the House version of this bill that provides amnesty to whistleblowers. And we talked about it a little bit. It's being discussed on Twitter. People see good with it and bad with it. I think this is a good thing. It doesn't, like we discussed before, I don't think it protects anybody that broke the law. It doesn't, it just allows essentially a safe space, either in a confidential setting or a classified setting or in a public setting, that nobody's going to be fired. There's not going to be any retaliation for telling your story or possibly outing people that are involved in the story. Your security clearances won't be revoked, things like that. And I think that it was TJ Allen yesterday who was asking me about it. And he's like, well, what does this do? Like we don't know yet. Like, that's the thing.
I mean, it pretty much just codifies something that should already be happening, which is Congress should know about all this stuff, right?
Correct. Well, I think what it does more than anything is that it normalizes the conversation internally. And it also puts a process in place for people to feel safe to come forward and tell their stories. It hasn't been signed into law yet. And again, I think there are going to be different versions of it by the time we get to the NDAA in late November, early December, when it comes to push because of a shove and this gets signed. And this is stuffed in a much bigger defense bill. But the fact that this got the first version of this bill, the House version of this bill, got through with zero debate is a great sign. Like, that's a great sign, I think. But let's talk about HR House Resolution 7900, which is what passed yesterday, and then we got the Senate bill 4503, which is what we're going to talk about today. And this is the establishment of an unidentified aerospace undersea phenomena joint program office.
New acronym.
A new acronym, which is, by the way, UASUPJPO. And it actually is not that bad if you try to say it out. I pronounce it USUPJO.
Sure.
USUPJO. It's almost like What's Up, Joe, but USUPJO. But yeah, this acronym is ridiculous. Let's be clear. It's a ridiculous acronym. But yeah, I mean, should we just dive right into this?
Yeah.
We're already there.
And go ahead, Jane.
And isn't this really, like, remember the Transmedium UFO office was part of the original Gillibrand Amendment, and then it got X'd. And so this feels like a more thorough version of that, and them getting it back into the bill, but probably with some more stipulations than before.
But that's what politics is.
Yeah.
Is it's putting something in there and then people giving you, critiques on it, and then you going back, rewording it, and then putting it out there again until you put something out that satisfies everyone and then gets passed. But what that also does is I feel like it almost lubes the pipes for it down the road, because it's like you're planting the seed of like, hey, we may not get this year, but you could bet your bottom dollar that you're going to see it. We're going to ask for it again next year. And chances are, I have a feeling this is going to get passed. I mean, with the way it's going now compared to last year, I think both of these bills are going to get passed, both in the House and the Senate. And I hope it doesn't have too much change. We'll see. I mean, we've got to really break this down and see sort of where the blind spots are, like we try and do with everything. I don't want to just jump right on board with it. But the cool thing about, and then we'll come back to this for a second, but going back real quick to HR 7900, Brian Bender released an article yesterday. Our concern with, and by the way, Katie Howland's sort of like little mini phone home or event to call House of Representatives, call your congressman. I did it. I think it went great. We did a little live stream on here. It was fun, super simple. And when I called, I also added the caveat of oversight. And when Bender wrote about this yesterday, there was a line in there about oversight. I got to look it up. I had it on here and I totally clicked out of it. But there seems to be every 4 years, there will be an oversight of sorts to make sure that everything is running as it says it should be.
Inspector General, right?
The Inspector General, the IG, right? So every 4 years, there will be oversight on this piece of legislation. So that's a good thing. Like, we didn't even ask. Like, I mean, I did when I called, but it wasn't in the legislation. So at least I don't recall reading about that in the proposed legislation before it was debated. Did either of you guys?
Yeah, I do remember. Yeah, you mentioning that, and it wasn't there. I feel like maybe it was updated in the last couple of days, because I do feel like I read something about the Inspector General. Maybe there was that same article you were talking about, but I think that language did make it into the final version of the bill that the Inspector General will be doing oversight.
It seems that way. I mean, we might have missed the updated version between the passing of the bill and the first sort of version we saw of it. That's possible as well. But anyway, I just wanted to touch on that. I was like, that's awesome. I think that's even better for the amnesty bill, right? The Gallagher bill. So all right. So going back to S 4503. So here we have the bill here. And this is a pretty chunky part of this bill. So let's just dive right into it. It's section 1683. I'm going to go ahead and put the link to this. If you guys want to follow along or read ahead, you can. If you hit the PDF version, it starts on the bottom of page 87. So if you guys want to, click on it yourselves, it's there. But the establishment of Unidentified Aerospace Undersea Phenomena Joint Program Office. Establishment of office in general, no later than 120 days after the date of this enactment. So kind of the same timeline as the UAPTF office, right? Around mid-July is when this would have to be established in 2023, right? So let's see here. Enactment of the Intelligence Authorization Act for fiscal year 2023. The Secretary of Defense, in coordination with the Director of National Intelligence, shall establish an office within the component of the Office of the Secretary of Defense or within a joint organization of the Defense Department, Department of Defense, and the Office of Director of National Intelligence to carry out the duties of the UAPTF, the Unidentified Aerial Task Force, as in effect on December 26, 2021, and such other duties as are required by this section, including those pertaining to transmedium objects or devices and unidentified aerospace undersea phenomena, like Jane, you had mentioned before, space, atmospheric, and water domains, currently unknown technology in other domains, and the designation, the office established under paragraph 1 shall be known as the Unidentified Aerospace Undersea Phenomena Joint Program Office, in this section referred to as the office.
Wait, I already have a question about this, right? Because
go ahead.
From my knowledge, the UAP task force they did that preliminary assessment, was it almost 2 years ago now? And then I thought that they were kind of done, right? We had the last year with the NDAA, we had the AOI, MSG, and kind of the ASTRO offices being enacted. So it's surprising to me that they're referencing the UAP task force.
Mhm.
I didn't think that was in existence anymore.
That's a good question. I mean, I thought that the office was established literally right now, right? Like, I mean, we're in mid-July. Like the office from last year's NDAA should be established now. And I think that's what they're referring to as the office. And maybe that is because they haven't named it, I don't think officially. And maybe until it's actually the date, the 120 days, which I believe is what, July 20.
No, 100. That's like 4 months, right? So that would be.
Is it? Yeah,
in
you're
April,
right. No, in April. Yeah, in April. I don't know. Anyway, yeah. No, you're right. No,
yeah,
you're
not a big point, just a little bit of a weird nuance.
I understood the UAPTF to be like the office, right, that was established most recently and is still ongoing, right? And then you have
that's my understanding as well.
AOISMG like alongside it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, it's not one of the old shuttered programs that we're just now hearing about.
It's either
it's confusing though, because
it is confusing. It's either the AOI MSG or it's the, I don't know, a version of the UAPTF known as the office.
Fair enough.
Like, I mean, and then now we're going to get another office, or at least this is what they're asking for.
Got to create jobs, guys.
Got to create jobs. So let's see here. Director and deputy director of the office. Appointment of the director. The head of the office shall be the director of the Unidentified Aerospace Undersea Phenomena Joint Program Office, who shall be appointed by the Secretary of Defense. So that's pretty neat. Appointment of the deputy director. There shall be in the office of deputy director of the Unidentified Aerospace Undersea Phenomena Joint Program Task Force. This acronym sucks. Like, it sucks. Who shall be appointed by the Director of National Intelligence. The director of the office shall report to the Secretary of Defense. And then so the director reports directly to the Secretary of Defense. I mean, I don't know. I think that's a good
high
thing,
up there,
right?
Obviously,
that's high up there.
Office.
Yeah, it's an important office to me. That's what it says. The deputy director of the office shall report to the Secretary of Defense and the Director of National Intelligence on the administrative matters of the office, and to the Secretary of Defense on all operational matters of the office. So you got the DNI and the Secretary of Defense. Developing procedures to synchronize and standardize the collection, of reporting, and analysis of incidents, including adverse physiological effects regarding unidentified aerospace undersea phenomena across the Department of Defense and the intelligence community, in consultation with the Director of National Intelligence, are submitting a report on such procedures to the Congressional Defense Committees. That's pretty wild. Again, we're getting this physiological effects term put into the language of a bill. Like, and it underwater. Like, just never occurred to me that you might get physiological effects underwater, but it makes sense if you get them above, if you get them.
I mean, it's not specifically about underwater, right? This is aerospace / undersea. So it's a little bit unclear if they're talking about people having psychological or physiological effects from things underwater, or, the more close up encounters.
I think they're referring to both. That's why they put both in the name of the office, because I think all of these effects are covering both atmospheres, at least.
I feel like it's a totally different field too, even though obviously you could have transmedium craft, right? So you could have the traditional ufologists have covered how these craft operate in the air, right? But it really does seem like a really different field, like how things move in water. What are different submarines, like understanding ocean life versus bird life? Like, this is a really different thing. And I say this because we have a pretty actually decent coastline here in Texas, and people do see things over the water all the time. The closest I could get to this would be to look at all those sightings that happened over the water, those different than ones that happened over the land, of, you know, blah, 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 blah. So it's a different thing. And then one other thing I want to throw in there as we continue to read through this and think about all cases is I always remind people of the Cash Landrum conundrum, because this goes to the physiological effects, right? Like this is, and there are other cases, you know, Colares, Brazil is one of them, but this one really hits home, is that was in the 1980s when that craft hovered over 2 women and a son and a small boy, and they had documented adverse physical effects that were similar to radiation, burns, you know, cancer,
they had long-term effects,
all kinds. Yeah, and then you saw similar things with the Colares Brazil incident. So that leaves us with 2 theories here. And by the way, the government would not, and they were, in this case is important because the government was sued because they believed that the government knew about this craft. They saw a helicopter swarm it afterward. So that's 2 possibilities. One is this was an alien craft that was dangerous then. So, you know, what does that say about UFOs today? And what does that say about UFOs then and the government's knowledge about UFOs then? Or 2, this was ours or of foreign craft, right? And we still did not, you know, pay out the victims of this. No, there is no situation where the government looks good, whether you're a skeptic or a believer, when you think about that case, you know, and
well,
and
I'll just say also, if the government did pay them out, that would be almost like an admission that it happened.
True. Well, kind of might, yeah. So that's why this, you know? But that's, I guess, why I'm bringing it up is because here we have now actual legislation saying that we're going to look at physiological effects. If the Cash Landrum case were to happen today in 2022, in theory, you would think that they would be taken seriously. I guess there's not a fund for witnesses yet, but it would be now this wouldn't have been a military encounter, right? This would have been a civilian case. So maybe we're not quite there yet, but it's steps to get there. And you guys know I'm really skeptical about there being like a perhaps a darker design to these things, but I hang on to that witness, those attempts like to validate witness accounts and bring some accountability. And I do think the physiological effects is a really good angle.
Well, here's the thing: is something like Cash Landrum happened within the military, almost similar to the Rendlesham Forest case, where, you know, God, I'm forgetting his name, had to have a heart. It was
Captain Holt or something.
Captain Holt, where he had to go to John McCain, and John McCain tried to get his medical records released, and they approved the surgery without releasing the medical records. Like, so I think if with this new legislation, let's say if it passes, I think this new legislation might be helpful in releasing, you know, hey, why didn't they release his medical records? You know, like, where I wonder, do you think this legislation would help sort of pull information like that? Because I mean, it's internal, and it's, you know, you clearly have the information, like, and it had to do with a UAP incident. Maybe he can get some sort of closure on his medical records, at least in the classified setting where he's told, you know, hey, here are your medical records, but don't tell anybody what you saw, kind of thing. You know, at the very least, he deserves the answers to it, you know.
There must be other historic cases or something, some law nerd in here who knows where there have been like medical records that maybe were disclosed to the public or redacted or something, or at least disclosed to a group within the government, right? To like investigate, like the Kennedy assassination, for example. Like you'd have to, and in order to do a proper investigation, those people would have to have a lot of access to records that maybe the public didn't get, right? So there must be.
Well, there's a whole thing with, you know, I know Gary Nolan was doing a government project to study a bunch of these kind of physiological cases with a group of people, And I think, it ended up a lot of those being kind of Havana syndrome type stuff. But
right.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely seem to be looking into.
Can you imagine if Navy seamen are getting Havana syndrome type side effects after encountering these things underwater? That would be nuts. Like, that would be nuts
so
to
much
me.
Creepier.
But also, and as I'm thinking of it, I think the new legislation would, let's say, because the witnesses, again, and I'm taking Cash Landrum and I'm putting it into a military situation, but they witness helicopters. Those helicopter pilots would be able to say, hey, I was there in 1986. The craft was there. We were told not to talk about it. Here's exactly what happened that day. I feel like somebody like that would be able to come forward after signing an NDA and be able to tell their story without fear of getting in trouble.
Yeah,
so that's what that legislation essentially would do. And we can't answer the question on, well, what's it going to do? Like what's going to happen? What kind of information are we going to get? We have no idea. We have to let the law first be signed. Law has to get signed. And then once it's signed, then we have to wait and see who comes forward, what stories they tell. Will they even be able to be shared? That's the thing, is I think most of these stories are going to be behind closed doors. They're going to be heard there first, and then they're going to be picked out as to what makes it to the public arena. But let's get back into this bill, because there's some interesting things here that also might, I think, say that little bubbling effect, the stuff coming to the surface after bills are written. And again, this process takes years, okay, to really understand how effective it is. So we have to be patient. But this idea of more people coming forward, and particularly science getting involved, I think that's what excites me the most. And that is written in the House resolution bill. So the Senate version of the bill. So let's keep reading. I'm going to pop it up again. Let's see here. So we left off with aerospace phenomena across the Department of Defense and the intelligence community, in consultation with the Director of National Intelligence, and submitting a report on such procedures to the Congressional Defense Committees. So, there's going to be easily 8 committees that get this report as well. Easily. And then that doesn't even count the subcommittees that also might have access to this. Go ahead, rather.
I am disappointed that there's no public report, or at least it doesn't specify any public reporting there.
Well, we get a public report on October 31st of this year. So
sure, but not from the UA JASCO, whatever the hell it is.
USUPJO. I think we have to be patient, because let's say it gets signed today. This exact version of the bill gets signed today, and it becomes law today. We need to give it 120 days to open the office, establish who's in charge of it, and then set a procedure, which takes months, sometimes to set up procedures. Hopefully it doesn't take too long, because all these other offices has been established. So hopefully they can sort of adapt and get things going quicker. But I mean, I think October 31st of 2023, I think these offices will be talking to each other, and it wouldn't shock me if something came out of this office that they found, but I again, we have to wait and see. We don't know. We still don't even know the final version of the bill, but this is what they're proposing. This is to me like their wish list, essentially, is what Senate is putting on paper right now. And then they're going to debate it and let's see what happens. But let's continue. Let's see, where was I? Congressional Defense Committees and Congressional Intelligence Committees and Congressional Leadership. Okay, so that's who they have to report to every year. Developing processes and procedures to ensure that such incidents from each component of the department and each element of the intelligence community are reported and incorporated in a centralized repository. So to me, that tells me that everyone is going to be reporting to the same place. So that's why I think it's possible something could bubble out of here. Any thoughts?
Potentially. I think that we'd probably learn it through the Congress and the leaders that they're reporting to. Yeah. I'd be surprised if this office gave us a direct report.
Well, I'm looking for the definitions part of, which is like, wow, this is long.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Haven't even scrolled to the end yet. Oh, definitions. So I'm curious if they define the intelligence community, because I know in the previous amendment, that was I'll have to find out, but that was a pretty important part, because they specifically define the intelligence community based on the National Security Act from 1947. So that included a huge group of organizations, of course, that would have records going back to 1947.
Yeah.
So I don't know, though, in this case, if they're just using the vague phrase or if they define it more specifically this time around, but I will find out.
I think they do define it, and I think we'll get there.
I probably do a Control F on the national security.
Space Oddities, thank you so much for the $10 donation. He says, hello, homies. Hello, back to you. Thank you so much. I truly appreciate it. Okay, so establishing procedures to require the timely and consistent reporting of such incidents, evaluating links between unidentified aerospace undersea phenomena and adversarial foreign governments, other foreign governments, or non-state actors, evaluating the threat that such incidents present to the United States, coordinating with other departments and agencies of the federal government as appropriate, and this is where it starts to get really fun, including the Federal Aviation Administration, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, the Department of Homeland Security, the Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the National Science Foundation, and the Department of Energy, which I loved. Coordinating with allies and partners of the United States as appropriate to better assess the nature and extent of unidentified aerospace undersea phenomena, preparing reports for Congress in both classified and unclassified form. So we are also going to get a version of this, including subsection J. Let's see here. Subsection J is probably below, right? Yeah. Preparing reports for Congress in both classified and unclassified form, including under subject, I just read that, ensuring that appropriate elements of the intelligence community receive all reports received by the office regarding a temporary, non-attributed object or an object that is positively identified as man-made, including by creating a procedure to ensure that the office refers such reports to an appropriate element of the intelligence community for distribution among other relevant elements of the intelligence community, in addition to the reports in repository described in paragraph 2. So this tells me that they also have, that they have also an emphasis on objects that is positively identified as man-made. So if they do find something weird, they definitely know it's China or Russia. They're going to have a procedure to ensure that that weird-looking thing gets to the appropriate offices and the appropriate parts of the intelligence community, right? Is that the same way you guys are reading that?
Yeah, I think it seems like it.
I mean, this to me is really cool, because this is something that keeps Americans safe within a UAP bill. You know what I mean? Or UAP legislation. I think this is something that you can be like, hey, this is not just for the kooks and crazy people. This is legitimate homeland security stuff. There's a hole in our security system. There's weird things flying. And I think most of the time they are human made, and they just don't have a security or a reporting method to report these things to the proper offices or intelligence community, FBI, CIA, whatever 3-letter, office you want to send it to. That's a good thing.
I mean, unidentified doesn't mean alien or extraterrestrial necessarily. Right. And, they call out, foreign governments and stuff, they're going to be looking into that as well if they find stuff. So I mean, it's hard to say that this is a bad thing.
So here's where it's really cool. Response to and field investigations of unidentified aerospace undersea phenomenon. Designation. Yeah, right. Designation. The security and coordination with the Director of National Intelligence shall designate one or more line organizations within the Department of Defense and the intelligence community that possess appropriate expertise, authorities, access, data, systems, platforms, and capabilities to rapidly respond to and conduct field investigations of incidents involving unidentified aerospace undersea phenomena under the direction of the director of the office. The ability to respond. The Secretary, in coordination with the Director of National Intelligence, shall ensure that each line organization designated under paragraph 1 has adequate personnel with the requisite expertise, equipment, transportation, and other resources necessary to respond rapidly to incidents or patterns of observations involving unidentified aerospace undersea phenomena of which the office becomes aware.
Yes, yeah, field investigations that got cut from last year's NDAA.
Correct. They're asking for it again, and it's like, to me, it's almost the exact same ask, right? Like, they're asking for personnel, equipment. So, essentially saying, hey, this office doesn't have to be that expensive. All of these things already exist. They're already within the apparatus. We need a couple Hummers to go out in the desert and go see something that might have crashed. We'll call the Army. If something crashed in the sea or there's a report, hey, lend us a couple of whatever kind of military boats that would be available to go do something like that.
Glurp the alien does have some scuba gear, so he's got a drone and some scuba gears. We're ready.
I love, here's what this bill says to me. And I'd love to get your opinion on this, you guys. They're really trying. Like, lawmakers are genuinely listening, and they're trying to write something that would address this issue from so many different angles. They really are. And I mean, we can make fun of the acronyms. We can make fun of the different offices. We could definitely complain about the confusing number of offices and acronyms and who reports to what and where. Hopefully they'll have almost like a mall diagram of what is what. What do they call those things? Not like a timeline, but no, almost like a map, or a legend, like a legend of who reports to what. Yeah. So to me, it's like they're genuinely trying, and then they go debate it, and then they try to fight and reword things to get these things into the bill. Again, we were saying this last year, like, oh my God, if this bill goes through as written, holy cow. And Jazz's response to it, well, I don't think it's going to get a lot of resistance. And I also think that this is not going to get a ton of resistance. First of all, this is the second time they're seeing it. So we planted the seed for this last year. Hopefully this is one of the seeds that sprouts into the new NDAA. Like, I think if we have boots on the ground, fins in the water type teams going out to see what's going on, I mean, we'll probably never see the light of day, but I still think that's really cool, because then those stories get told to senators. Those stories get told to congressmen, and then we get press conferences like we do from Marco Rubio and Kirsten Gillibrand, and we get laws and verbiage like this written into defense authorization acts. So people will complain, well, we're never going to see anything from this. We're never going to see anything. Maybe you're right. You're probably right. But we're going to see new laws written. We're going to see science taking it more seriously. We might even see a breakthrough independently outside of this stuff. But the idea that the government is now ready to talk about this, I think, if you're not excited about this, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I'm sorry. Like, to me, this is huge.
To me, I am excited about it, but I can see kind of the skeptic side, right? Where it's we still don't have any evidence or really any concrete reason to believe that they're going to find anything here, that there really is, something, especially going on underwater. We haven't had any evidence of that. So it's curious. Like I want to believe, and I hope that the language of this bill is rooted in, what they're seeing in the classified briefings and stuff like that. But it's not clear to me that that's actually what's going on. It does seem like this might just be, Chris Mellon and Lou Elizondo kind of, hey, this is what should be in the bill, without any real substantious basis for that. I hope I'm wrong about that, but there seems to be a little bit of a disconnect between what's in the bill and what we know about what's happening in the area.
I feel the same way, and I know we'll get to eventually, so I don't mean to jump ahead, but it's so relevant that the Eric Weinstein and the Mick West debate, but there was something where Eric Weinstein was like, this ship has sailed on, I don't know exactly what, but like the basic idea, I guess, that there are unidentified flying objects or whatever. And I just couldn't, as somebody who's been looking for this, like looking for proof of extraterrestrial life, like as hard as I could possibly look. I'm almost day after day. I used to update TextUFOsightings.com every single day, like except for holidays. And so I've been on the trail for a long time, and I've still not seen any video or photo that's also verifiable. Okay, that's a really important point that has knocked my socks off, that has proven to me that this is real. Now, that could be that they are showing up in other countries, other states, only for the military. Those reports don't end up in my inbox. The MIB make sure they don't ever end up in my inbox, right? Mm-hmm. But that leads me to wonder, what is it that they have? I'm a little bit kind of curious about what's under the ocean, because it's something I don't get to see my day-to-day. There actually could be something super new there. And so I know that that's really disappointing to people, but I've been looking, and I just I haven't found it yet. In the big parentheses, they say not verified. Okay. Some of the more compelling, like there's one really, really compelling case that sticks out to me that I do not feel comfortable talking about today, because I sense that there was some people that did not want that information out. I don't know if it was an alien involved or whatever, but the most compelling cases are the ones that disappear immediately. The most compelling cases are the ones that, that don't have a backstory. I have that video of somebody who, saw a flying saucer in Texas, I think in the 90s. I think that video is so interesting to me, but heck if I can track down that witness. So do I think there's something to the phenomenon? Yes, but I do not think this ship has sailed. And I've been looking at cases for years and years and years. And so I think that is an overstatement. And until anybody can bring forth that knock your socks off video, or even, up close photo, I think that is an overstatement. We have to be prepared to be disappointed with the evidence that the AOSMG and
absolutely well, here's the thing, and we're not even done with this bill yet, because I think this also I think there's also an emphasis on science here, for science to get involved in the conversation. And I think if let's just say we get our wish, if it's even your wish, it's my wish for this bill to get through as written, I think this leads to that video that changes the zeitgeist. Okay, very similar to what 2017 did, but even bigger, because I think this one will show observables. This one will have cockpit audio and possibly more witnesses similar to Fravor and Dietrich. I think the reason why they're emphasizing, and here's the thing, nobody has been asking for information on undersea phenomena. Nobody.
Yeah, this is a cool
and I think the reason they're asking for it is because in classified meetings, briefings, they're getting stories from submarine commanders. They're getting stories from service people who are on ships, in planes, on radar systems, in submarines, and they're seeing and hearing and physiologically experiencing these things, I think that's why we're getting this verbiage. I think that's why we're getting this office, because nobody asked for this. And I think the reason why we're getting this is because lawmakers are seeing the things you and I are dying to see. I really do. Like, I don't think politicians, again, knocking on wood, okay, this is not the final bill. Manage our expectations. But the expectation with this is 2023, 2024, expect these laws and bills to really start producing data, actual seismic shifting data. But this has to happen first before we get that. I mean, is anybody going to argue that?
Well, yeah, and I'm really glad that, they did say the unclassified reports, because, a concern of mine when they started talking about underwater stuff is that it is so secret, right? Like, that was the one thing that they asked in the congressional hearing, and they immediately said, no, let's go to a closed door session there. And there are some, secret things that are going on in our waters. There's the Russians have the hyper captivating or capacitating missiles that kind of, create a bunch of air bubbles around them so they can go super fast in the water. So, it could be stuff like that they're looking at it as well. It's a little bit unclear, but yeah, it'll be really interesting to see, what that report is when they start talking about the underwater unknowns.
Yeah. I'm just saying, like, no one's right on this yet.
Yeah.
And skeptics and not the believers.
Yeah.
We have to wait and see.
And I also want to add, because I also don't want to like discourage people from sending me like your reports. I have patterns and data and conclusions to make from it. I think what my point is, when if the aliens are visiting, my conclusion is they're purposely not doing all their displays in front of you. You are just passing by, and they know better than to like stop and hover and then shoot off into the stratosphere in front of you, when you have your camera, or they make it to where you don't film, or they make it to where your film's grainy. So I want to make it clear that I do think that there's something to this phenomenon, especially when you compare the eyewitness testimony to the physical evidence. There's really is a big gap, in my opinion, and I don't think people are lying, right?
Yeah.
But I think, we're talking about perhaps advanced intelligence. So yeah, the question is, are they displaying themselves more obviously in the ocean for whatever reason, or for military versus, for people here in Texas, right? Well,
you hit on something there that Eric Weinstein mentioned in the conversation about, there is a large segment of society that has interacted on some level with these things, and that is a data point. Whether, how we look at that data point, how we sort of study it, do we count it? That's up for debate, but those people should be treated with respect. And I think that was his sort of biggest beef with West. And I don't think West does it on purpose. It's more of his resting Mick face, and even in that interview, there was a couple moments where Mick laughed. And for a second, Eric thought he was laughing at him. And then Mick would make his point, and then he understood, okay, he's not laughing at me. He's just laughing at sort of the situation or the conversation that's going on. But
Weinstein was debating a straw man in that interview.
I don't know what's happening. I've only seen Eric in one other interview. I know he's really popular, so sorry if I'm late. I've read some of his tweets, but I do remember him being very sensitive in the interview. I don't even remember what the interview was about.
Yeah,
but I think there was somebody else in it, and I remember he was really sensitive. So
we'll get to it. We'll get to it.
That was my takeaway from Eric.
We'll get to it. It's one of the things we're going to talk about.
It's not a bad thing.
No, not at all. I mean, yeah, but you can see he's very serious.
More emotional.
He's very serious. He doesn't have. It seems like he doesn't have a lot of patience for
very
BS.
Pretentious.
Yeah, a little pretentious, definitely. Because, I mean, dude, he's a super genius. You know, like everything. I think he's a super genius.
What has he done that makes you think that?
Well, I mean, yeah, he hasn't it's funny. He hasn't written a book, and Mick told him that he wrote a book. I thought that was funny. But I mean, he's a professor. He's not dumb. You know, I just feel like sometimes those very intellectual sort of personalities come off as pretentious, because I think for a long time, this conversation and people who had this conversation were idiots to him, like just complete fantasy morons. And he kind of expressed that in the interview. And I think this is him kind of fighting the urge to do that while talking about it at the same time. Whatever. I don't want to get into this conversation. Let's stop. There's still stuff to talk about in this bill. But yeah, I mean, we'll break that down in the second hour. Okay, so let's get back to this bill.
Hold on, folks. We'll get there.
Yeah. So here's another section. So the scientific, technological, and operational analysis of data on unidentified aerospace undersea phenomena. Designation. The Secretary, in coordination with the Director of National Intelligence, shall designate one or more line organizations that will be primarily responsible for scientific, technical, and operational analysis of data gathered by field investigations conducted pursuant to subsection and data from other sources, including with respect to the testing of materials, medical studies, and development of theoretical models to better understand the explained unidentified aerospace undersea phenomena. The authority, the Secretary of the Director of National Intelligence, shall issue such directives as are necessary to ensure that each line organization designated under paragraph 1 has authority to draw on the special expertise of persons outside the federal government with appropriate security clearances. So to me, that says, hey, we're going to reach out to some scientists.
Well, yeah, the National Science Foundation or something they mentioned earlier. Yeah.
Well, and we're gonna reach out to some scientists, and we're gonna give them national security clearances, and these will be the faces, I think, of things that are found. When things are found, these will be the people that they sort of rely on to, I think, let the public know possibly what's going on, or at least talk about it in their podcasts, like Eric does.
Yeah, it'd be a good choice. Yeah, there's a criticism of scientists. People think that they're gonna, they're hiding stuff, or don't want to find aliens. But yeah, I think that if they get some scientists in there and they find something, it'll be hard to keep them quiet, because it'll be groundbreaking.
So data intelligence collection, availability of data, and reporting on unidentified aerospace undersea phenomena. The Director of National Intelligence and the Secretary shall each, in coordination with one another, ensure that A, each element of the intelligence community with data relating to the unidentified aerospace undersea phenomena makes such data available immediately to the office, and B, military and civilian personnel of the Department of Defense or an element of the intelligence community and contractor personnel of the department or such an element have access to procedures by which the personnel shall report incidents or information including adverse physiological effects involving or associated with unidentified aerospace undersea phenomena directly to the office.
I think we could all agree on that, right? If they see something unidentified, they should be reporting it and eliminating the stigma. And this goes a long way to that.
Yeah. I think, and it has to be done like immediately. Like, there's no just holding on to it. Intelligence collection and analysis plan. The Director of the office, acting on behalf of the Secretary of Defense and Director of National Intelligence, shall supervise the development and execution of an intelligence collection and analysis plan to gain as much knowledge as possible regarding the technical and operational characteristics, origins, and intentions of unidentified aerospace undersea phenomena, including with respect to the development, acquisition, deployment, and operation of technical collection capabilities necessary to detect, identify, and scientifically characterize unidentified aerospace phenomena. So yeah, cool. This is all wonderful stuff. And I just love it. Scientifically characterize. They're looking to again, like this bill screams, hey, we're trying. Like, we're trying to get the information and the right people in place to really look at this, characterize things, catalog things, report things, destigmatize things. Like this, again, it feels like a primer for bigger things coming down the road. And this is not going to be if you're looking for instant gratification when it comes to stuff like this, man, that's where I could understand you'll be disappointed, because you're not going to get instant gratification on this. This is for sure a long game. But I really do think 2023 is going to be absolute fire when it comes to this discussion. But use of resource and capabilities. In developing the plan under paragraph 2, the director of the office shall consider and propose, as the director of the office determines appropriate, the use of any resource, capability, asset, or process of the department and the intelligence community. So whatever they need, it sounds like they'll get if this gets written as such. And this is where I think, like, I don't know if something like that gets put in, like this sort of like, free for all to whatever resources you need. I think there should be, again, oversight on this stuff to make sure this doesn't get out of control. But, they'll be reporting to the Director of National Intelligence and the Secretary of Defense. So I have a feeling that they're not going to go crazy with this, because they're going to have to answer to some really powerful people. Director of National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, the leadership. The Director of National Geospatial Intelligence Agency shall lead the collection efforts of the intelligence community with respect to unidentified aerospace undersea phenomena, geospatial intelligence. Briefings no later than 90 days after the date of the enactment of the Intelligence Authorization Act for fiscal year 2023, and not less frequently than once every 90 days.
Yeah, that's the shortest interval we've had on reporting in any of these government bills, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yes. Every 90 days, they want a geospatial intelligence briefing, right? Is that what I'm basically reading here?
Yeah, it's unclear exactly what they'll be reporting to the geospatial agency.
Yeah.
I'm assuming it'd be
every 90 days. I get a report,
tell them
essentially,
everything, yeah.
right?
Tell them what they found, yeah.
The director shall brief the congressional defense committees, the congressional intelligence committees, and congressional leadership on the activities under the director under this paragraph. Now, this is what I love, the science plan. The director of the office, on behalf of the secretary and the director of national intelligence, shall supervise the development and execution of a science plan to develop and test as practicable scientific theories to, 1, account for characteristics and performance of unidentified aerospace undersea phenomena that exceed the known state-of-the-art in science or technology, including in the areas of propulsion, aerodynamic control, signatures, structures, materials, sensors, countermeasures, weapons, electronics, power generation, and 2, provide the foundation for potential future investments to replicate or otherwise better understand any such advanced characteristics performance. Like, here's the thing, right? Pharmaceutical companies, technology companies, Fortune 500 companies, all of these companies ask the government for subsidies to develop new tech all the time. They get government money to develop new things and then turn around and sell them to us, especially in the case of pharmaceuticals, for absurd prices. To me, this is an important part of the science aspect of this, because if scientists go into these programs, get the security clearances, and then come out of it going, oh my God, I got to figure out how this works. Like, it's possible. It's real. Like this is something that we can reach. I'm going to apply for a government grant to see if I can figure it out. And you never know. I mean, again, you're going to have to be beholden to the government as far as what you can release and whatever. But I think if companies start making different propulsion systems,
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like Roger Bannister in the 4-minute mile. If you know it's possible, then even if you don't know how it works, you're going to try to figure it out and do it yourself.
Well, essentially, this is giving science the permission to think about it. To me, that's the way I kind of take it. It's like, hey, guys, this is real. The jokes aside, like, start taking this seriously, and one of you guys figure it out. Because I think we have it figured out.
I will say, I hope that they do take it seriously, and it's not like the hunt for Skinwalker Ranch where they're firing rockets down into the ocean and hoping that USOs come up.
The legislation for the stuff that happened at Skinwalker Ranch pales in comparison to what we got.
We have
last year.
The chief scientist was Travis Taylor, who was running the science operations at Skinwalker Ranch.
But he's not the only one in there. We don't know, there's other wonderful scientists that were also part of that study.
And this is the Secretary of Defense is appointing people here. So I think that hopefully we'll get some. And not that Travis Taylor isn't a good scientist, but hopefully we'll get some scientists in there that will have no question that they're have the correct perspective.
Their bias stays at the door.
Yeah.
I understand that. Yeah. But to compare this to the Skinwalker, George Knapp said this on the Skinwalker show the other day, right? Like, all of this stuff, whether we want to admit it or not, it does start with Bigelow. Like, it does, like, this whole idea of, like, knowing about government programs, looking into weird stuff, whether it was a waste of money, whatever, blah, blah, blah. We could discuss the nuance about it all day, all night. But it has led to this. Like, there's no doubt about that. But this, to me, makes whatever Senator Reid and whatever these guys put together with Bigelow pale in comparison. Like, this is in the National Defense Authorization Act. They're establishing offices, they're establishing procedures, or at least they're asking for it. They're planting the seeds. This is again their wish list, but I think I can't compare the two. I think they're uncomparable. They're uncomparable. But with that said, the Bigelow era and the Bass era and the OSAP era is the predecessor in a way to at least from what we know publicly. Who knows what other programs they had in the past, but this one is the most well-known public one. Go ahead, Jane.
But to Rather's point, so especially if we're saying that Bigelow and Skinwalker Ranch started a lot of this, right, and like got a lot of things into motion, and let's suppose that the TV show and Brandon Fugel is saying, they're being transparent, and that everything that's happening at the ranch, we're finding out about. And I think even Christina, who really has been a huge fan of the show, I think she would even agree with us that we still haven't seen like unequivocal evidence, right? With like the 5 known observables and everything. So it's like to the point of, yes, this is a very hefty wish list. It's very cool, but what will it lead to? And if there was a phenomenon and it is intelligent and it does display for us, is it really up to us? And at the end of the day, maybe this is a step to get there, and in some ways maybe a superficial step, because it just, we're just educating ourselves along the way. And then I think too, it's like if a mass sighting happened tomorrow, right, that was just undeniable, would this legislation matter as much? But would the conversations we had, every day up until that mass sighting as a result of the legislation matter?
If we get a mass,
matters, I guess,
if we get a mass sighting that's undeniable, and that the president is saying something about, I know this legislation gets even bigger. It gets even more funding. It gets even.
We've been having that this legislation prompted, I think, matter, I guess, is what I'm getting at. So to even and again, I have expressed skepticism a lot about Lou Elizondo and all of this disclosure advocacy. But the thing is, it's like ultimately, if they are real and if they are visiting and if we are to make contact with them in our lifetimes, it is important that we're prepared. So even if the Tic Tac UFO is ours, or someone else, some other man's, or something like that, there are valuable questions that video is making people have, that they have to have before alien contact.
Well,
right?
Can I just be 100% clear? I think this bill publicly is about the unidentified, right? The diamond in the rough. That's sort of the public face of this. But I think a lot of this is also to hide our tech.
Right.
I think that's the main purpose of this legislation, is to hide our own tech.
And, well, yeah, that was the point of the Joe Rogan interview, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's part of this conversation. But I think and we're gonna have to wait and see what happens. But I think the difference here is that we have a group of lawmakers that are just as interested, and I think are becoming just as well informed as us. Because when we first looked at that Gallagher question in the public hearing about Maelstrom, or not Maelstrom, what was the thing he talked about?
Davis notes?
The Wilson Davis notes. And at first, at least for me, I was like, dude, why are we asking this question in the first public hearing ever? But then you hear his explanation of, well, if we can disprove it, then we could put that to the side and say, okay, that's a waste of time. But if it's true, if there are special access programs that are not being reported to Congress, that are housing technologies that could be considered game-changing or otherworldly, that's a problem. That's a problem. And so now you put it on public record. I just think that these lawmakers are just as interested in some of these answers as we are. And I think that's where this is going to meet ahead, is how hard are these senators going to push when this national security apparatus pushes back and says, okay, you guys are going into a box we cannot talk about. And they're going, no, we gave you the money, the authorization, and the power to immunity to look at this. So, hey, it's a wait and see thing, man. It's a wait and see thing. But I again, like I always compare this process to the legalization of marijuana and just how long it took and how many wins and setbacks. And for a long time, it felt like you're taking 10 steps to take 9 backwards or 11 backwards. Like that happens with these legislations. They go back and forth and they see what works, see what sticks. A lot of this is going to come down to how much pressure lawmakers put on these laws that they're writing. And if they actually turn up the pressure to get some of these answers to the public. And that's incumbent upon us to say, hey, every year, that's why we're doing the Big Phone Home. Like, what do you guys got? Like, what do you got? It's been a year. What have you collected in this year? What new information are you going to give us? Like, when are we getting our public hearings? What about the FOIA process are you going to improve? Like, all of these things we can ask for, and we could hold their feet to the fire, and then they could turn around and enforce these laws that they write. So there's a lot of moving parts to this, but I think this legislation starts setting up the table to publicly start talking about this from a government perspective. If we get the UFOs over the White House scenario, or if we get somebody who takes a picture of top secret technology, and it turns out that, almost like the stealth fighter, like, oh my God, the United States has something exotic, and science now has the permission to look at this exotic thing and try to figure it out. And it'll take science 20 years. And by then the technology will be everywhere. And then we'll be like, oh my God, yeah, that was what it, blah, blah, blah. And then the other thing is, like, this could just be a way of a slow drip. like getting us ready for the technology spill and or the actual phenomena spill, or both. I think it could be a lot of these things.
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, it takes the feigning ignorance off the table for the government. They're going to have to answer us one way or the other. They can't just say, "Oh, we don't know what it is and we don't care," because they obviously do care and they're looking into it.
Right.
And if there were, let's say if there were aliens visiting and we thought we had evidence or we weren't sure, let's say one or two of those options, right? You would constantly be speculating and wondering about what other countries had access to, what other evidence they had access to. And so the only reason I could see, beyond, of course, protecting our own tech, in starting a slow drip process, would be because that you have to be the first to get there. And so you'd start the race so you can begin a little bit ahead of everybody else, get everybody else to start showing their cards, and then you can kind of decide what to do. So there could be cards, again, like Under the Ocean, that they're not showing yet because you do have to win. But what I'll tell you this, I would not expect them ever to show all their cards, because you would be losing your hand. Like, you would be losing the game on a world stage if you did that at any point. It just makes no sense. But if you think that they could be around, maybe there will be a mass sighting in the future. There does need to be a narrative around it, some education around it. That makes some sense to me.
Well, you know what? Another thing that makes sense is just, again, like cameras and independent organizations like the Galileo Project are starting to look in the skies. The technology is becoming cheaper. The cameras are getting better. I have a feeling with the proper funding, somebody's going to get something. Somebody's going to be able to triangulate something, get a super clear picture, determine tech or non-human, and they're going to be able to make a big announcement and beat the United States government to the punch.
And that's probably that could be something that they fear. Again, people are like, why now?
Right.
For things like that. Well, we don't want to lose the race, even though nobody really wants to start it. No national security or intelligence group, probably for any country, wants to start this race or really wants to win it. Frankly, it's a lose-lose, really. It's a lot. I think it's when you're put into a corner that you have to start doing this. And that's why I've been, wondering about some of the latest evidence, and that it's either given in a very limited way to where we can't really see as much as we need to, right? Or it's other technology that, is undisclosed, but with the intention of getting us used to seeing maybe more advanced or awe-inspiring tech that is a little could cause some fear and reaction.
For years, people were talking about seeing triangles. For decades, people were talking about seeing that shape in the sky. And I guarantee you that conversation in the zeitgeist prepared people for the B-2 bomber.
And still, even that's even a more of all the really persistent ones. That's still one of the more persistent ones. And we have increasingly advanced triangle even after the bomber too since. So yeah.
Well, let me get to the rest of this here real quick, because we're already in the second hour. We haven't even gone through this whole bill, and there's a lot, and that's why I put the link out there, you guys. But this part is very interesting. Assignment of priority. The Director of National Intelligence, in consultation with and with the recommendation of the Secretary, shall assign an appropriate level of priority within the National Intelligence Priorities Framework to the requirement to understand, characterize, and respond to unidentified aerospace undersea phenomena. Core group. Not later than 180 days after the date of the enactment of the Intelligence Authorization Act for fiscal year 2023, the Director of the Office, the Secretary of Defense, and the Director of National Intelligence shall jointly establish a core group within the office that shall include, at minimum, representatives with all relevant and appropriate security clearances from the following: the Central Intelligence Agency, the National Security Agency, the Department of Energy, where I think that's where all the goodies are, if you ask me, is in the Department of Energy, the National Reconnaissance Office, the Air Force and the Space Force, the National Intelligence or the Defense Intelligence Agency, and the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. They never called out agencies like this in the first report. right? I don't remember this in last year's. Do you guys?
Well, yeah, that's what I was thinking about when Jane, you were talking about the intelligence community. I think they maybe just said that in the previous one, and this
That's
seems
what I'm
like they're
thinking.
kind of spelling it
Maybe.
out there.
Yeah, that's
To me. This is the thing that doesn't make it through. This is a seed that you plant that maybe you get in 3 or 4 years. I can guarantee you the Air Force has no interest in sitting at a round table talking about this. That they've shown that for sure. But I love that the Air Force got called out in this. You don't see the Navy, because the Navy and the Army, the Marines, they cooperate. I feel like they cooperate a hell of a lot more than the Air Force has on this topic. And the Department of Energy, like, there's no way, even if you get a rep from there, I feel like they're not going to tell you a damn thing. That is the most secretive department in all of government, I think.
It is weird that they don't have the Navy there, though.
It
right?
is
It's undersea. You would think that the Navy would be first and foremost. But it does say that at a minimum it's these. So yeah, I wonder if you're correct in that they're kind of calling these agencies out.
Right. Well, because I think the Navy's already, they've been the most cooperative.
Well, sure, but if you're codifying a law saying that, who's going to be at a round table, you'd think that Navy would be number one on that list because they are cooperative. And
my guess is that they probably have already asked everyone to be part of this, and these are the departments that didn't answer. or just were like, nah, we're good. I don't know. That's an interesting question. I'm curious to know what sort of is the how the sausage is made on how they came up with this list, because that's a good question.
Those extra secretive organizations?
Well, the Department of Energy is where all of our nuclear...
more so than the Navy, though, and Army. Well, yeah, Air Force.
Air Force and
equal.
Space Force.
Yeah. Well, the Department of Energy is where all of our tech comes from. So the nuclear reactors in our submarines and aircraft carrier, all of that technology was made in the Department of Energy, and all of those patents sit in the Department of Energy. The Department of Energy is, again, the most secretive department in our government. And they've got all the toys. They make the toys for everyone.
Nuclear secrets too. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. But let's see here. So reports from the director, annual reports from the Director of National Intelligence requirement no later than 180 days after the date of the enactment of the NDAA. And annually thereafter 4 years, the Director of National Intelligence, in consultation with the Secretary, shall submit to the appropriate congressional committees a report on unidentified aerospace phenomena. Elements. Each report under subparagraph A shall include, with respect to the year covered by the report, the following information: all reported unidentified aerospace undersea phenomena, related events that occurred during the 1 year period, all reports unidentified aerospace phenomena, events that occurred during the period other than 1 year, that 1 year period, but were not included in an earlier report. So that sounds like stuff within the year and also older stuff.
Yeah, well, I think the first year they want everything, and then every year thereafter it's everything from that year.
Probably follow-ups to reports, as well, because you get new information about reports from the past, maybe.
An analysis of the data and intelligence received through each report, unidentified aerospace undersea phenomena. The way these reports are written are just kill me. An analysis of data relating to unidentified aerospace. Okay, so here are the things.
Is there any photogrammetry though?
Yeah, any photogrammetry. An analysis of the data relating to the UAP through the collected. They're going to collect through geospatial intelligence, signals intelligence, human intelligence, and measurement of signal measurement and signature intelligence. So those are the different sort of, things they'll be looking at to analyze this data. So, they're getting really, really detailed. The number of reported incidents of unidentified aerospace phenomena or restricted airspace of the United States during 1 year period, and an analysis of such incidents identified under Clause 5. Let's see here. Activity, undersea phenomena, foreign governments, identification. Go ahead, Jane. What were you gonna say?
Oh, never mind. No, keep going.
Okay. Let's see here.
I'm just scanning it myself.
Yeah.
For some of the highlights.
Well, yeah, and I was, originally I was reading this section looking for the unclassified public reports. And I don't think there is anything specified in this section. Just that earlier, talking about one line about the unclassified reports, because that's what I'm really interested in, right?
Right. No, there was some in here about the unclassified reports, but this is an assessment of any health-related effects for individuals that have encountered unidentified aerospace phenomena. The number of reported incidents and descriptions thereof of unidentified aerospace undersea phenomena associated with military nuclear tests or assets, including strategic nuclear weapons and nuclear-powered ships and submarines. In consultation with the Administrator for Nuclear Security, the number of reported incidents and descriptions thereof of unidentified aerospace undersea phenomena associated with the facilities or assets associated with the production, transportation, or storage of nuclear weapons. So they're also looking at the nuclear aspect of this. In consultation with the chairman of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, the number of reported incidents and descriptions thereof of unidentified aerospace undersea phenomena or drones of unknown origin associated with the nuclear power generating stations, nuclear fuel storage sites, or other sites or facilities regulated by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. Let's see here. They've got also a section for reports from elements of the intelligence community. So the intelligence community is going to have to report or give a report no later than 1 year after the date of the enactment for 2023 and annually thereafter. So they have to give a report every year for at least 4 years. And each head of an element of the intelligence community shall submit to the Congressional Defense Committees, the Congressional Intelligence Committees, and Congressional Leadership a report on the activities of the element of the head of undertaken in the past year to support the office. So the CIA, the Department of Energy, the Air Force, all these guys have to write a report every year and submit it to this office. And then we've got semi-annual briefings. And then, so we've got, so semi-annual briefings. So that's 2 briefings a year that will go to the director of the office shall provide to the congressional committee, subparagraphs A, B, and D of subsection 1, classified briefings on unidentified aerospace undersea phenomena. First briefing. The first briefing provided under paragraph 1 shall include all incidents involving unidentified aerospace undersea phenomena that were reported to unidentified aero phenomena task force or the office established under subsection A. After June 24th, the 2021, regardless of the date of the occurrence of the incident, subsequent briefings, each briefing provided subsequent to the first briefing described in a paragraph shall include at minimum all events relating to the unidentified aerospace phenomena that occurred during the previous 180 days, instances in which data was not shared. For each briefing period, the director of the office shall jointly provide the chairman or chair and ranking member or vice chairman of the congressional committees specified in subparagraph A, D, and subsection 01 to...
Yeah, they're really getting specific about all these briefings.
Super specific. But I mean, hey, man, the more specific, right, the better.
Yeah, it's hold them to it.
I'm trying to find the public. They had mentioned something about a public briefing in here, but I mean, yeah, this is just crazy. This is insane.
What's interesting is they do mention the National Security Act of 1947 in it, but it's not. I don't think it's part of the UFO amendment. I think it might be part of another part of the National Defense Act or this whole bill, which is interesting. But so they do, in another part of this bill, they do define the intelligence community as what was defined in the National Security Act of 1947. And again, so it includes a bunch of agencies, CIA. But what's really interesting is on July 7th, 1947, if you guys know that was an important
Yeah,
time.
Roswell.
The National Security Act of 1947 was debated for the first time in the Senate. So it's kind of interesting. We had this restructuring of the intelligence community, same month of Roswell, you know, in the peak of the flying saucer storm, and then it's being referenced here in these UFO bills. Though I don't know if it actually is. That would be something that would be different in this bill versus the Gillibrand, which it did define the intelligence community.
Well, and then they've also got
That
the Senate version of the protection from liability and private right of action. So essentially another, version of the Immunity Act. Protection from liability shall not be a violation of any law, and no cause of action shall lie or be maintained in any court or other tribunal against any person for reporting any information through and in compliance with the system established pursuant to subsection B1. Any employee of federal agency and an employee of a contractor for the federal government who has the authority to take, direct others, and take recommended or and approved any personnel action shall not, with respect to such authority, take or fail to take or threaten to take or fail to take a personal action, including the revocation or suspension of security clearances with respect to any individuals as a reprisal for any reporting as described in paragraph 1. So your boss can't mess with you, and you can't get in trouble for this, essentially, for at least telling your side of the story. Yeah, and then we've got the Comptroller General of the United States compilation of unidentified aerospace phenomena records.
And I think at the end of this, they talk about a report, and at the end of this section, they do say that they need to have a unclassified version of the report as well.
Yeah, what do you see what page that is on? Because that's the last thing I want to cover, because I know we're running out of time.
116.
116. Okay.
Very bottom of it.
We should have given each other parts to do a proper read through.
Well, it's so long,
The one page up. Yeah, the form.
Okay,
the report submitted under paragraph 1 shall be submitted in an unclassified form, but may also include a classified annex as necessary.
There you go.
So that'll be cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're gonna get some of this, again, we have to see what makes it into the final bill. But if 70%, 80% of this gets in, I think that's a huge win. And of course, we're gonna have to see what does make it in. But if this gets through without any debate, like yesterday's bill, like the House resolution bill, we got a pretty good shot. You never know. Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe we will be demanding answers from the CIA soon enough.
Yeah, I mean, it's tempting to see a bill like this and say, man, they must know the answers if they're doing a bill like this. Which I'm not quite there yet. I don't think that that's necessarily the case. But I think that if there are answers to get, well, actually, this is how we're going to get an answer one way or the other, is through a bill like this.
Agreed. Yeah, you got to manage your expectations, but I think this is, again, like, to me, you see how detailed this bill is. Like, to me, this is a genuine effort to try and get the answers for lawmakers so they can make better decisions, but also because they want to feed this appetite that the public is demanding. And I got to tell you, if Gallego or Gallagher, this legislation ends up to really big things in 2023 or 2024, don't be shocked if one of them runs for president and is like, hey, I gave you the truth on this. I wrote the legislation. I wrote. Can you imagine if that was a presidential debate? If that was with the last two guys, Gallego and the
Gallagher. Undersea aliens support me as well.
Right. Okay. Well, you guys, I've put the link in there. I'll also put the link in the description below. Go through this bill. I'd love to know what you guys think of the bill out there. Hit us up. We'll there's so much to talk about that, as you can see, we didn't get through the whole thing. And I know, like you said, there was a reference to the 1947 Security Act, and I know people got super excited about that. But I mean, Jane, what was your takeaway from that?
Well, I actually can't even tell if it's linked to the particular UFO part of the bill, because there's a lot in this, and so, but there is, I have to figure out where it is, but there is, I'm searching right now, you can hear me typing. There is mention of the National Security Act of 1947 actually on page 4 in definition. So I guess if that is for everything in the bill, the term Congressional Intelligence Committees has the meaning given such term in Section 3 of the National Security Act of 1947, which it was just ironic that they first debated it July 7th, 1947. But essentially that act was a law that restructured the U.S. military. I'm reading Wikipedia. That restructured the U.S. military and intelligence agencies following World War II. So this affected Department of Navy, Air Force, CIA, all these agencies, right, that we think could have had information about Roswell, essentially were part of this act. So that's when they say intelligence committee in these, this must just be a thing, and I just learned it via the Gillibrand Amendment. But maybe they task the intelligence community with things, beyond UFOs from time to time, and this is how they define it. So
exciting day. Period. Like that's fun. This is fun. I can't wait to see. I'm curious to know if this was this has to have been televised on some level, the House resolution bill. I'm wondering if the bill came up and nobody said anything and they just went on to the next thing, or if Gallego and Gallagher actually professed their reasons as to why they wrote this. I don't know. I didn't see any video on it, so I'm assuming maybe it was a closed session. I'm not 100% sure. But
as far as what could drive headlines, though, right? Like, because I feel like the news media would drive a lot of that, right? And I feel like there is going to be, right, like unless there is a new piece of evidence, right, or even testimony, I think without photo and video the media would react to, they are going to get a little tone deaf, like, oh, we just talked to you about a UFO bill. We're going to talk about another UFO bill. Like our audience only has so much time for UFO bills. So I think it will be interesting to see is there, as this has become more of a common topic, does it kind of get drowned out, in the media again or not? And what does it do to the disclosure clock, right?
Well, speaking of disclosure clock, I think this bill, honestly, I was thinking about this today. How many minutes does this bill, in the passing of HR 79, the House Resolution 7900 bill, how far does this disclosure clock move?
It's definitely a positive. I mean, I don't.
Right, for sure.
I disagree. I don't think that this is any proof or even evidence that there's a there. This could easily turn the clock back if they don't find anything.
You don't think writing this legislation could lead? I mean, is at least a sign of something's there.
I mean, we haven't seen any evidence. I understand.
I understand we haven't seen any evidence, but we have to. I mean, why aren't we taking the next step of lawmakers have seen good evidence? Like, why are we not doing that? Why is that such an absurd leap?
Because there's nothing really to indicate that.
This bill indicates that.
I think if there are aliens visiting, right, like this would be a step closer to proving them, right? Or even if you end up proving some of the sham behind some of the people because you're forcing some science to be done or whatever. So I think look, if you've already concluded, that there's nothing to it, and then it's all just like, I guess, more of the psychology around it, I guess. This would be like a more neutral, like, I think, thing that happened, right? Because I don't think people are swaying one way or the other. But I think there's something could be in the ocean. It's kind of like what I'm saying. Like, I feel like UFOs are very elusive to capture on camera. The moon was insane. last night here in Texas. I guess it was a blood moon, and it looked like bigger than it's ever looked. And my camera phone of it, I mean, it's laughable. It's laughable. It literally looks the same size as a street lamp that was, also, that I was right next to. So I just think these things are so hard to capture good evidence of. And so I'm curious if they've been hiding under the ocean or in the water, right?
Well,
or
again, like and everybody's like, Rather's totally right. Love is Thai. Looking good in that, Rather. Rather said, God darn it, man. Like,
I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I think it's a good thing.
Underwater UAP legislation, unless they're getting stories from people who are giving them crazy stories from underwater. Like, just for a second, you guys, Alex Dietrich and David Fravor were in classified briefings for 10 years before their names were public. Who else is behind the scenes giving these lawmakers these stories that are changing their minds on this?
Where are the Congress people just, telling us that someone told them a crazy story,
right? They
can't
do that yet because the laws haven't been written in place to protect people from doing that.
Well, they can say, we are hearing really crazy stories about things underwater. We can't go into details.
They have said that. Bill Nelson has said that. He said that you hear these stories from our pilots about things going from the water to space. Like, I just don't understand. I guess we just have lost all faith in the intelligence of our lawmakers. Everybody thinks they're just.
If you look at what's going on these days,
no, I understand. Like that, I get it. I understand what you're saying, but to me, this is just as crazy. Like, I think if pilots and personnel were complaining about a design flaw and whatever, and it was hurting soldiers or it was hurting people, they'd complain about it and it would get changed immediately. And I think with this, we've had years and decades of really smart people, really credible people telling lawmakers and telling their bosses, and nothing's gotten done. And here we are, we have the legislation to put those things in place. And to me, like, why are we doing this if we don't think that there's something non-human behind this or something extraordinary? Where did Rather go?
my camera got too hot. I got to change over to camera.
I mean, I'm sorry, but like Representative Carson, Gillibrand, Rubio, the way they talk about these things when they talk about them publicly, but I understand that's not proof. I get it. It's not proof. But I think they can't just come out and say what's in a classified briefing.
But I would say there is, like, this is what I was saying earlier too, is I do think, at least from civilian evidence or evidence I've looked through, there's a real big gap between the testimony and the experiences of people and then the physical evidence to prove that the experiences happen. I mean, we've talked about this time and time again. And so you kind of start going in circles where there's two conclusions you can make from that. One is that, E.T., they're there, knows how to not get caught, right? And so that makes this very difficult for us, right? And the other thing is the big pink, the big elephant in the room, which is the government cover-up. So, I mean, I think that we kind of always seem to be, even Lou Elizondo, talking about in the Brazil UFO hearing speech, he was talking about the 70 years of secrecy. It's like, well, where is all this evidence to back up all this incredible testimony, not just since 2004, but, yes, dating back to the 40s. And so you go in circles and circles and circles, and you conclude cover up or alien cover up. It's either one of those two. And so I think it is naive to go into, hey, we're going to ask to see all the USO evidence, where clearly if it's out there, it's been kept from us, for a reason, by human or alien design, right? But at the same time, you have to keep pursuing this, and you can't really be afraid of the truth. And I don't really suspect that anybody's fully in control of it, right? And we very well could get like a mass sighting, right? That requires no, top secret clearance or whatever, or somebody might very well spill the beans this year because of legislation like this. I don't know why that couldn't be possible. I feel like a lot of organic things have happened because of UCR that were not predictable at all to the powers that be. And so I think whatever, the initial motivation was in creating this legislation, or whatever the intelligence agents whatever walls they decide to put in front of it in the future, I do think that we all as individuals can impact things in an individual way, in a surprising way. And we could totally find out some brand new things about this phenomenon. And we could see that this was one of those dominoes. But I do think this is more elusive than we may be prepared for. Yeah.
Well, real quick, I just want to address this from Matthew Wright, because he seems to think I'm confused on this. And he says too much faith in politicians and their ability to understand something scientists can't. First of all, this legislation is begging for coordination with science. Okay. They want to give scientists special security clearance to help them take a look at this. But I'm not claiming that politicians understand what they're looking at. What I'm telling you is a politician is probably just as intelligent as any one of us here in this discussion. And if we sat in a classified briefing, and in this classified briefing, let's say 15 years ago, okay, we got a classified briefing where Alex Dietrich and David Fravor came into the room, and then they got to see the video, the full 4.5-minute video of Gimbal and Go Fast. And then they also got the eyewitness testimony. They've got the radars, the classified radar data. They've got the pilots telling them, hey, this was crazy. This was nuts. This was unusual. This was not Russia. This was not China. That's what they got in a class. Like, to me, I mean, you don't think if you got that in a classified briefing with information that we have not seen yet, that paints a better picture to lead a normal thinking person to say, oh, yeah, we don't have that. This is 2010. That doesn't exist yet. Why is this pilot, a Top Gun ace pilot, best on the planet, telling me this story? He doesn't have to do this. I think those are the things they're sitting on. I'm not saying they understand or they think there's proof, but I think they've seen and they've heard things that have propelled them to do this.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, they went in a congressional hearing. They asked about the undersea stuff, and they said, "Hey, let's take it to the classified briefing." So that does imply that they, have heard some, classified information about undersea stuff. I guess kind of my point is that I don't. I think it's a mystery, right? I don't think that they know one way or the other, or they should be even leaning one way or the other.
I don't think they know one way or the other either.
So I don't. So that's why I'm saying I don't think that necessarily moves the disclosure clock closer, assuming that the disclosure clock is, disclosure of non-human intelligence. I think that, it could move it forward. It could move it backwards, depending on, maybe they do look at this and they find out, yeah, it's, crazy Russian torpedoes that, we are doing things that we didn't know was possible, or, something like that. I think there's a genuine mystery there, and this will get at that. But I don't think it can be seen as proof that there is
no, well, nobody's claiming it's proof, but what I am claiming is that I don't think this is being done because all of these people are stupid or don't understand what they're looking at or can't understand intelligence briefings. Like, I'm sorry. Like, these are not just like, this isn't like the Department of Agriculture going, yeah, I think these things are real. This is the Department of National, like, these are committees that are all about national security.
Well, we also know who's, briefing them, right? It's people like Lou Elizondo and Christopher Mellon.
No, it's not. It's not just Lou Elizondo and Christopher Mellon. Like, stop saying that. Like, it's Lou Elizondo. Yes, I agree. They're in those rooms. But it's also pilots. It's also ground personnel. It's also submarine operators. It's also radar operators. It's not just Lou Elizondo and Christopher Mellon. Like, I'm sorry. This legislation
I don't know if
does
we have
not
any
get
evidence
written
that,
like this if it's just those two guys. The evidence is David Fravor and Alex Dietrich. That's proof that classified stories are told about UFOs and UAPs and incursions within our airspace.
Well, there was nothing classified about Fravor and Dietrich.
But it had to have been classified if they were giving the briefing in a classified setting, which they did.
I mean, they're dealing with classified systems and stuff, but the story wasn't classified. So if there's other stories like that, I'd expect them to, at least the vague details to come out.
What if those pilots don't want to come out? What if those pilots are still active members? That's my point is I think you're getting Lou Elizondo, you're getting Christopher Mellon, but you're getting 10 Alex Dietrichs and 10 David Fravors as well. And you're also getting a couple of scientists in there as well that have already had access to these things and are going, yeah, we have no idea what the hell these things are. I think you got people like, I don't want to say it's like you got experts, okay, in satellite systems who are going in there and saying, hey, we've got things coming in, like, this is unexplained. Like, this is a worry. Like, we don't know what these are, and this is being measured by the best satellite known to man. I think those are the stories they're getting, and it's leading to stuff like this, and they're going, holy cow, what's going on? What is this? I don't know. But they're asking us to put a procedure in place to report it. And that's what this is. I don't understand why we look at this and we go, oh, there's no proof. This isn't proof. Well,
like, I mean, part of that is a track record, though. Part of it is a track record of what the UAPF task force did, and them identifying stars as legitimate UAP that they briefed Congress about and said, hey, look at these crazy triangle pyramids that are hovering on our ships. And it turns out they're stars and other things. So they don't have a good track record here of, saying that these things that are unidentified are actually, non-human intelligence, when they were heavily implying that stuff was, non-human intelligence. So that's what gives me a little bit of, let's wait and see what they actually find and report to us. I think it's a great thing. I think
I'm sorry, Jade, you haven't hopped into this, but like, here's what I'll say is I think if you get 100 stories, okay, or 100 instances that are unexplained, maybe 2 of them are genuine, really bat shit crazy kind of experiences, okay? And I think they may have seen 1 or 2 of those, and some of those other ones where they're just misidentified or they're not classified the right way. And I understand. I think those things are going to happen, but I think there's also there's going to be things that are unmistakable. And I think if we had the longer version, especially gimbal, and especially if we had the version from the other pilot seat, the other plane, I think this conversation would be non-existent, in my opinion. If I had to take a guess,
one way or the other,
if I had to put money on it in Vegas, I would say that they're writing laws like this because they're seeing crazy things that they can't explain. And they're trying to put a process in place. And I also think that it's our tech that they're trying to hide. I also think that it's a drone issue. I also think, like it could be a multitude of other things. It could be all of these things all at once. But I just, I don't know. I'm not as...
Well, but to what Rather was saying is this going to bring us closer to non-human, the disclosure of non-human intelligence, and then he hasn't seen evidence that's displayed non-human intelligence. I think that, but I think that's just all he's saying, right? Like, we're making a lot of assumptions about what there is, right, and trying to predict what they're going to prove, because like the Falcon hypersonic technology vehicle, a Lockheed Martin drone they've built, we know of 2 that they've built. Its speed was Mach 22. It went over 16,000 miles per hour. Okay, and this is just from an article,
but it wasn't doing Mach 22 and making right angle turns.
Well, but an unmanned drone, I mean, but I don't know everything that this one of 2 Lockheed Martin drones that I just happened to find out about to Google as a civilian like can do. I'm sure there's a bunch of other Lockheed Martin drones that can do things, that I couldn't fathom, right? Like, because remember, guys, I mean, I know people get so annoyed. They're like, not everything is a drone. Trust me, I am just as annoyed by the drones. I have been talking about this on my site forever. The drones make it's so hard for me as a UFO researcher. And that's why those cases like pre 2000s, are so much more fun, because you're like, well, drones were, as popular. But when we go to these crazy testimonies, right, of like it did this and then it did this, and it's like we can use the phrase advanced technology. And then unidentified objects, like what about ball lightning and earthquake lights and earth lights? Like, what happened to all the different scientific possibility of what a UFO or UAP could be? Because it actually used to be a broader conversation to me. What got me most into this are actually the more, in my opinion, tangible earthquake lights, volcano lights. You want to talk portals? We can talk portals when we talk about those types of orbs, but that I think is different than non-human, than human, sentient human intelligence. And I think it's also being covered up, or has been fringe science up until, so I think we are starting to put so many presumptions on what this is and getting really angry at people when they don't agree, like, with our presumptions, and we're just not there yet.
Well, here's what I'm saying. Here's my point. I don't think we get that evidence, that proof, without legislation like this.
I'm 100%
agree.
I agree.
Okay, that's all I'm saying. And so for you to sit here and complain about the legislation,
I'm not complaining about it,
or I don't know. I just, what's the point of casting doubt if the legislation's already being written? Like, let's see what happens. Like, why are we being such negative Nancy's about it? Like,
I'm just tempering my expectations.
Of course, temper your expectations. That's what we started the conversation with. But all I'm saying is, damn it, like, let's give it some room to breathe before we just start knocking the hell out of it and comparing it to OSAP and Bigelow.
My point was just, let's give it some time to breathe before we move the disclosure clock towards non-human intelligence.
Damn it, I want to move the disclosure clock. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm moving in 5 minutes. Damn you.
Fair enough.
I don't give a crap what you say. And when this goes through, damn it, we're moving it again.
Well, this could be the thing that moves it all the way to midnight. I mean, it really could.
Yeah, it could. It could in 2 years. Or
yeah.
You know what I mean?
120 days after.
We need these things to take. And again, don't forget, we have a public report coming October 31st. And if the rumblings are true, we're going to get another public hearing this year. So
yeah,
just stay optimistic, man. Let it breathe. That's all I'm saying. All right, let's get to some comments that we had. With Space Oddity said, I met Squidding at the SCU conference, and I'm still trying to figure out if he's human.
It might be Gary Voorhees.
Might be.
So people are talking in the chat. So hey, Gary, if you're out there.
I did see that. Gary, if you're in the house, what's up, buddy? Let's see here. So Keeper of Knowledge says, you guys talk about Weinstein, but did no background research on him. He's a mathematical genius, rather, and you want to keep him on your.
Why didn't you talk about any math? There was no like.
I don't think it was a mathematical conversation, but what has he done? He invented an entire field of geometry.
I'm just surprised we didn't get. I was expecting a more of like a scientific debate between the two, and it was just such a different. I felt like Weinstein was projecting himself onto Mick West, like he was guilty about himself being.
Great.
We didn't get to talk about this, damn it, because we got so deep into this, Bill. But here's my shortest summary of that conversation. Eric Weinstein went into that conversation hearing things about Mick West and never actually listening and sitting down and watching any of his breakdowns and things. And he had an assumption about him because at least 3 times in that conversation, he goes, wow, I didn't think you would say that. Like, I didn't think you'd have that point of view. And that happened on this show. Okay. And I think what happened to Eric Weinstein is what exactly happened on this show a year ago when we had Mick West on. And we just figured out, oh, you kind of agree with us. You just have that resting Mick face that confuses all of us, and we think you're mocking us, you know. And the way he delivers sometimes his point sometimes strikes wrong. And I love that Eric called him out on it because that and Mick acknowledged that, like, I'm bad at that. So anyway, that's the assumption. That's the quick review on that. Maybe we'll talk about it next week. I don't know. I mean, depends on the news that comes out. The Sparky Lady says, I'm looking forward to watching Nope, which, by the way, do you guys want to go July 22nd? We should all go see it opening night and then do a review.
Yes.
Yeah,
we should do that.
Yeah, I'm there.
Let's do it. All right. So we'll look forward to that, you guys. Laszlo Holyfield with a $10 donation says, the Senate intelligence bill, separate from the defense bill, requires any crash recovery programs have to report to the defense secretary. So there you go. You guys, that was a killer show. I'm sorry we didn't get to the James Webb telescope, which I wanted to get to. Bill, how much time do we have? Do we have 2 minutes? What's our out time?
1 minute 56, I think.
56. I always do this. Anyway, thank you to Jane. Thank you to Rather. Thank you to everyone in the chat. This was an awesome conversation. I wish we had more time. We'll go into the James Webb telescope. I promise. Hopefully next week. I'm praying for like no news so we can talk about the stuff that we didn't get to today. But I was not expecting this today, and I think this is something that we should talk about. We yelled at each other a little bit, which was great, you know. But we walk out of here respecting each other, which is even more important. But thank you, everyone. Check out the links below. Support the show if you can through Patreon. Other than that, have a wonderful weekend. Thank you for coming aboard, getting weird with us here on another episode of the Unidentified Celebrity Review. Your home for credible news, reviews, commentary on everything UAP and UFO. My name is Luis Jimenez for Rather Be Squidding, Jane Kyle. We'll see you guys, I think, on Wednesday for the bonus episode review of Skidwalker. But if not, we'll see you Thursday. Have a great night. Peace.
Bye.
Screw you, Riot. I'm going to tell y'all right now, all of these wonderful people would not be here without Patreon supporters like you. If you enjoy credible news, reviews, and commentary on UFOs and UAPs 5 days a week, you want to support this show. What's your name? Marty. Marty, look how easy this is, Marty. Pick up your phone. Boom! You're a Patreon member. I mean, look, it's so easy. You just click the link, which is right here. Just for $1 a month, you can support this show. Just fill out the information and pledge what's comfortable for you. It could be $1, $5, $10, or who knows. Just support.